face zero resistance. But that's exactly what happened. They faced zero resistance. So it looks like Assad and his government actually negotiated with the rebels and made a deal, and he dipped. Now, initially, there were reports that he went into his plane and that his plane crashed when it was leaving Damascus. But that turns out to be fake news. That didn't happen. Assad is actually in Moscow right now. So the rebels have officially taken Damascus, and there's a lot to say about that. And we will. So let's start with this. This is an article in Axios. Assad regime collapses as Syrian rebels seize control of Damascus. Syrian rebel groups seized control of Damascus on Sunday and declared the country to be free. More on that in a minute. Following the capture of several major cities in a lightning offensive over the past several weeks. The rebels' move into Damascus with no meaningful resistance is proof of the de facto collapse of the Assad regime, which has clung to power through 14 years of civil war. Now, by the way, here's why it happened so quickly. And again, we touched on this in our previous segment. Russia is a big ally of Syria. They would normally help them massively. Turns out Russia is, of course, completely bogged down in Ukraine, and they've sent a tremendous amount of weapons and manpower to Ukraine. So they're a little busy right now. Iran is a little bit busy. They've been doing tit-for-tat strikes with Israel. They're probably waiting any day now, any minute now, for Israel to launch a complete attack on the Iranian government and their nuclear sites, etc. So they are probably prepping their defenses as we speak. So Iran is a little busy right now. And then also, Hezbollah is engaged in a war with Israel, and Hezbollah was a massive fighting force on the side of the Syrian government during the entire Syrian civil war. So basically, all of their allies, all of them are busy. Hezbollah's busy, Iran's busy, Russia's busy. Russia came in and did like some airstrikes at the beginning of the rebel offensive last week, but I think Putin literally admitted like, yeah, this is going to be a short little one-time thing, y'all. I don't think I'm going to be able to do this for much longer. And it turns out that when the Syrian government doesn't have the help of Hezbollah and Iran and Russia, it basically doesn't exist. Right? I mean, literally, no fighting whatsoever. They just waltzed right in to Damascus and took it. So they say here, it's a stunning development and another major regional earthquake after a year of war in the Middle East, further destabilizing Syria and the region in the short term. In the longer term, it could have dramatic implications not only for Syria, but also its allies, Russia, Iran, and Hezbollah, which helped keep Assad in power after the 2011 uprising. Reuters reported on Sunday morning local time that Assad has left Damascus to an unknown location. As I said, we now know he is in Moscow. So now let's talk a little bit about who was leading these rebels. Okay, who was leading? So Mohammed al-Golani is the leader of the insurgency that toppled Assad. Abu Mohammed al-Golani, the militant leader whose stunning insurgency toppled Assad, has spent years working to remake his public image, renouncing longtime ties to al-Qaeda and depicting himself as a champion of pluralism and tolerance. Yeah. I'm sure this is sincere. Bro, I know I was a goose-stepping Nazi 3 weeks ago, but you know what? You know what, bro? I'm actually a big fan of gay people and trans people and stuff. I love commies personally. I believe in pluralism. Oh, come on. In recent days, the insurgency even dropped his nom de guerre. What the fuck? Don't be hitting me with 180 IQ ass things. I don't know what the fuck this means. I think all they're saying is he dropped his like Muslim name or his Al-Qaeda name, I don't know, and started going by Ahmad al-Shara. The extent of the transformation from jihadi extremist to would-be state builder is now put to the test. This is so silly to have this conversation. Insurgents control the capital, Damascus. Assad has fled into hiding, and for the first time after 50 years of his family's iron hand, it is an open question how Syria will be governed. Is it really an open question? Would you say open is the right way to describe that? Syria is home to multiple ethnic and religious communities, often pitted against each other by Assad's state and years of war. Many of them fear the possibility Sunni Islamist extremists will take over. Oh, do they? Well, where would they get that notion from? The country is also fragmented among disparate armed factions and foreign powers from Russia and Iran to the United States. Turkey and Israel all have their hands in the mix. Again, more on that later, and we're going to do a segment tomorrow on Israel's role in this. The 42-year-old al-Golani, labeled a terrorist by the United States, has not appeared publicly since Damascus fell early Sunday, but he and his insurgent forces, Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, or HTS, many of whose fighters are jihadists, stands to be a major player. So look, this guy has, he took part in literal terrorist attacks. There's even some talk that he may have directly beheaded some people. And I'm not kidding when I say there's an all-out offensive, not just from him, but also aided and abetted by some in Western media to say, him, bro, he's actually not a bad. He kind of had a change of heart and stuff, bro. I mean, bro, he's evolved, all right? Get off his ass. All right, so more on this. So Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, or HTS, this is his group that just took over in Syria, which has now seized power in Syria, was declared by the U.S. State Department as a specially designated global terrorist group on May 17th, 2018. And as Michael Tracy says here, what's the over-under on how much longer that designation is going to remain in place? That's a good question. What is the over-under? It's not like we're saying, bro, back in 1932, this was a really bad group, but, they've changed their ways. They've reformed. 2018, they were a designated terrorist organization by the United States. All right, more. Look at this. This is real. The U.S. Embassy in Syria. We remain committed to bringing leading al-Qaeda figures in HTS to justice. Stop this terrorist. Mohammed al-Jalani. This is the dude. Up to a $10 million reward from the United States government for killing this guy. Or knowing where he is, right? And telling them where he is. All right, ready? And then we get this. Just the other day, actually, in CNN. How Syria's rebel leader went from radical jihadist to a blazer-wearing revolutionary. Oh my God, y'all. I'm having flashbacks. I'm sure you guys have seen those articles going back to Osama bin Laden. So when Afghanistan was fighting against the Soviet Union, there were articles in the Western press about Osama bin Laden basically calling him an independence fighter and a revolutionary and praising him. Because, of course, at the time, Ronald Reagan got in bed with the Mujahideen and gave them money and weapons so that they could fight the Soviet Union. Because in their mind, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. We will fund radical jihadists to fight the Soviet Union. And there were all these puff pieces written. And now it's like we learned nothing. We learned nothing. Okay. All right. I got more. Israel sent troops into Syria immediately after Assad was toppled and extremist Turkish-backed rebels led by rebranded al-Qaeda took over. Israel wants to colonize even more Syrian territory beyond the occupied Golan Heights. This is the U.S., Israeli, Turkish al-Qaeda alliance. So again, I'm going to give you more on this tomorrow about exactly what Israel has done thus far. And you're going to be shocked to learn just how much they're involved, just how much territory they're taking, and just how much bombing they're doing. So look, I get it, man. I would say what I've seen is like a perfectly mixed reaction on the timeline. 50% of people are saying, shit, look, great. They got rid of a brutal dictator. This guy has the blood of countless people on his hands. He's got these hostages in his military prisons. He ruled with an iron fist. He was totally undemocratic. I'm happy he's gone. This is what a lot of people are saying. And then there's an equal number of people on the other side saying, okay, but it matters who's taking over, right? Doesn't that matter? Doesn't it matter? And look, Iraq, Libya, in the moment, people forget, but in the moment, there was widespread jubilation over the fact that Gaddafi was overthrown. Gaddafi seemed like a cartoon villain. Saddam Hussein, he genuinely did countless horrible things, atrocities against the Kurds. They had the war with Iran. The dude was vicious and brutal. Of course. But now in retrospect, everybody looks at it and they go, look, all that is true about Gaddafi being bad and Saddam being bad, but you cannot argue in good faith that what came after it was better. In fact, it is objectively the case. It is measurable to say, no, it's way worse. What happened after is way, way worse. And so here's an example, 2011 in Libya. Look how excited everybody is after Gaddafi falls. Here we go.
NTC forces insert. After many weeks of fighting, the former rebels celebrate their victory. But after a constant bombardment by land and air, the city lays in ruins. This ordinary drainage pipe has now taken on a greater significance as people come from miles around to see the final resting place of Colonel Gaddafi.